bill handler mentioned, and thank you to the bill handler for putting this together. It's good to bring these topics to the floor. But the bill handler mentioned that he hadn't found any research. So the National Center for Analysis of Longitudinal Data in Education Research talked about how opting out of your default school impacts students. So I wanted to just bring just a couple of things from that research. Those that opt out of their default public schools are able to exercise, or their goal is to exercise higher quality schooling options. When that happens, opting out is expected to lead to an increase in the traveling students' test scores. But what they're finding is that the estimated impact of opting out remains relatively stable across specifications, confirming the earlier finding that students on average opt out to similar schools and hence do not experience significant improvements in their school inputs. So we have to look at things like the outsider effect, this quality of school that they are choosing. We have to look at, again, this idea of advantage versus disadvantage. The National Education Policy Center describes open enrollment as a wolf in sheep's clothing. Basically, they are saying that it's supposed to be beneficial to families' choice options and increase levels of satisfaction by providing access to more high-quality schools and encourage students to improve and cater to families and compete for enrollment. But what it can do is to lead to the eventual shutdown of underperforming schools due to under-enrollment. We know, based on this research from the National Education Policy Center, that students of color and students from lower income families bear the burden of this transition to opting out of their default school. Again, there is this facing of othering. Then you have families who move into districts where they can't vote. So if they have a concern about the board, if they have a concern about the leadership, that is what they're stuck with. Voting with your feet is more complicated than it may seem. And also, this is something you don't know until you go into that school. School ratings are flawed. They don't often quantify things like equity or cultural competence. Open enrollment creates winners and losers. Open enrollment can actually exacerbate the effects of marketing competition, eroding democratic participation right under our noses and making the road to achieving an equitable education system increasingly challenging. I can tell you from firsthand experience that I have watched what it looks like through the desegregation program in St. Louis. I know that this body is looking for a way to improve education, to hold schools more accountable. Open enrollment is not the answer to that. We have to think about the intrinsic motivation of students. We have to look at that there is a lack of gains, that it's not improving school quality. We, as a legislative body, can hold schools more accountable. We, as a legislative body, can improve our archaic laws that someone mentioned before. Schools need community, communities need schools. When you create this environment that's supposed to lead to competition, what you do is lead to schools who struggle and teachers who are trying desperately to maintain the resources that they need in order to be able to teach each individual student. And when you take the top 3%, we'll just assume it's the top 3, away from those students and teachers, it's an unnecessary burden. And I've heard people in the body say, well, an individual student needs a different situation. Our schools have the ability to provide those different situations. Our parents have the ability to ask for more. We can ask for more. Our schools, our students, our teachers, our families, our community does not have to suffer because we've decided to put in legislation that undermines their ability to do what they need to do. If we are super concerned about the success of our schools and the success of our communities, then let's get them the funding they deserve rather than have money move all across the state.